Following in the tradition of the Millennium films that came before it, this film resets the timeline once more, ignoring all previous entries except for the 1954 original. This new film would again focus on the grim horrors of memories past, but this time, through the lens of a group of hardened ace pilots and technology too powerful for them to control. In Masaki Tezuka's 2002 film, Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jude.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. It's Connor back here with you, and I am here again with Chris, and we are here to do another episode in the Godzilla franchise. And today we are doing Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla, which is in the Millennium era and is actually a fun film. This was released, I believe, when I was roughly 8 or 9 years old. And I honestly don't remember watching it that early. I know that you, Chris, said that was it this one and GMK that was a double feature on Sci-Fi back when these were released?
It was Megagearus and GMK. That was in August of 2003. I'm trying to look when this one was released in the US on DVD. So it hit the US on DVD in March 23rd of 2004. So that would have been the first time I ever saw it.
Okay, likewise here. I would have been 10, roughly going on 11. So okay, that sounds a little more like it. But I like this film. I've always been a big fan of Mechagodzilla. Clearly, always been a big fan of Godzilla, and I like that this and the next film are like a little two-piecer. You know, they're a little combo for us.
Yeah, I like that as well. I was 11 going on 12 when this one hit DVD, and I remember in 2004 Sony put a bunch of Godzilla films out on DVD. They all had like the 50th anniversary sort of branding. You know, they were doing the Heisei and Millennium movies. They had all of those DVD rights in North America, and then they were reaching back and putting out some of the Showa films on DVD as well. I remember that's how I got, Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Godzilla versus Gigan, Godzilla versus Hedorah. That's how a number of those Showa era films hit DVD back then.
Yeah, I got a lot of those still, and I see a lot of people, like all the Godzilla movies were released on like the digital formats, Voodoo, Movies Anywhere, iTunes, all that, and they started, selling their actual like hard copies of them, and I was just like, nope, I'm keeping all mine, the Blu-rays, the DVDs, all of them, and it's like I like having the physical copy, and
Yeah,
I still have a lot of the digital as well.
yeah, I don't do the digital collection thing very much. I wish I had kept all of my old, like, as I went through the formats of VHS, DVD, etc. But I'm very much one of those that, like, once the Blu-ray comes out, like, I don't need to own the DVD anymore. Like, there wasn't, like, sometimes there can be a certain bonus feature, this or that is like valuable enough to hold on to the older formats. But I'm very much a like replace the old with the new. So like right now, when it comes to like all of these movies, if I just have the Blu-ray versions that we have available in the US. I don't like have the back catalog of all the other ones. I sold those off.
Okay, then that's the thing. As of now, I look at it as, they're sitting there collecting dust, but what am I gonna do? Sell them for like $3 a piece or something like that? I might as well just keep them.
Yeah, I actually made a bit of a gamble because I knew that Criterion had gotten all of the Showa films and that there was going to be a box set. And at that window of time, there were certain Showa DVDs that were out of print and ran for a pretty good price. So I kind of, made a bit of a gamble. I'm like, well, I can sell these now while these DVDs fetch a pretty good price before, because as soon as the Blu-ray comes out, all these old DVDs aren't going to have that secondhand market value. So I had a store in Tampa near me that would buy like if you had an obscure, weird, hard to find DVD or Blu-ray that was out of print, like that's where you got a decent chunk of change for it. So I remember I had a sealed I think it was a sealed Terror of Mechagodzilla DVD that was out of print back when like all of that stuff was out of print, and like I don't remember what I got for it, but like I got way above like I'm sure the $10 that I got it for back in the day. I think it was like 30 or $40 for it. So you know, like I kind of chose wisely to kind of just unload the collection when I could get a few bucks worth of them.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think of just a quick rundown of what you think of our film today, Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla?
Oh, yeah, to get us back on topic. I think it's very good. I think it's one of the stronger entries of the Millennium series. I mean, it's not a terribly long line of films, but I would put it in a well, I mean, we'll see where I put it, but I'd put it pretty highly. I like it a lot. It's essentially a remake of Godzilla versus Megaguirus, and we can get back more into all of the ways that it is a little bit later, but it's sort of a remake of Mega Gears that's kind of better in every single way. So I like it quite a lot.
If you are okay with this, I will before we get into like fun facts and whatnot, I will let you go into the history or what you know of it being the, in your opinion, a better remake of Mega Gears, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure, sure. I'd love to break that down while we're kind of introducing the film here. So like in terms of the cast and crew, there's a lot of overlap. It's got the same director of Masaki Tezuka. This is the second Godzilla movie. Same screenwriter, Wataru Mimura. Same producer, of course, like all of these films, Shogo Tomiyama. Same cinematographer of Masahiro Kishimoto. Same composer of Michiru Oshima, and not only the same composer, but she's sort of beefing up and improving the Godzilla theme that she introduced in Godzilla versus Megaguirus. This is the first Godzilla movie since Return of Godzilla in 1984 to not have any of Akira Ifukube's music in it at all. And in terms of the sort of structure and plot layout, it's really similar to Megaguirus in that both of them start off with a prologue sequence several years before the movie where a female military combatant officer soldier is involved in a Godzilla attack and her team gets wiped out. In Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla, I think it's handled a little bit more strongly because it's kind of a direct, overt mistake that she makes that sort of leads to her team getting killed. It's not just her superior officer pushing her out of the way and saving her. So it's sort of like she feels this more of a blame for it, like she made a mistake, and so that's motivating her. But again, the same plot line. So she's got this sort of vendetta, revenge history with Godzilla. Uh, she's tasked with sort of heading up, piloting, controlling this team to go against Godzilla. The big sort of plotline MacGuffin of the movie is some kind of special cannon. In Megagears, it's a black hole gun. In this one, it is the uh, freezing gun that they put on Mechagodzilla. And the freezing gun is, of course, a lot more realistic and believable. Not that a giant robot is terribly realistic and believable, but it's a bit more than a black hole gun. There's a scientist who helps her who's crushing on her. And Mega Gears, it's like a young scientist who's kind of a perv or whatever. And against Mega Godzilla, it's an older scientist who's a single father. So a bit more sympathetic in terms of being on the hunt for a mother for his daughter, if you will. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like the general plot structure. We kind of each film kind of concludes with the female military officer having to do a sort of manual suicide bombing kind of attack on Godzilla to fire the big weapon that's going to take him out. And it ultimately doesn't really take it out. And she's left sort of standing over a sunset as the credits roll. Just a lot of similar sort of structural and plot device things like that. It's just that almost every single one of them in Against Mechagodzilla is done better. and it's about 20 minutes shorter than Mega Gears, so it's just paced and structured a lot more effectively than that movie.
Nice, very nice. Well, I appreciate you going into that for us because, like I said, I always like to hear you talk, always like to hear you ramble because I know you know what you're talking about.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And like this is the kind of thing where it's like I didn't notice a lot of these for a long time, or at least I didn't notice it to the extent that it was until like some, people pointed out, and it's like, yeah, when you watch those movies, if you were to ever watch them back to back, it's like shockingly similar in a lot of ways in terms of the bones of the films.
Yeah, just simple differences, kind of, like a lot of movie franchises, simple differences down the road, except these two are almost right next to each other.
Yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of films and franchises where the plots are very similar. Anyone who's like a layman would be like, "Oh, every Godzilla's movie is the same. He shows up, he destroys the city, they shoot him with missiles. It's all the same." But it's like every fan knows that, like, well, they're not all exactly the same. They all have their own stuff going on. But these are two that are like they are about as the same as I think any two Godzilla movies could be accused of being.
And you know what? I mean, with everything in common that you just said, being the director, producer, the writer, all of that, it's not a surprise.
Yeah, it's almost as if they did it on purpose, because I got the sense that, looking around things, that there's kind of these rumors that after the first three Millennium movies, they were going to kind of pick and choose which one they were going to sort of make sequels off of, or which team they were going to use to continue the series. And so it seemed like Mega Gears got selected purely for like practicality reasons, because the director of 2000 had already directed several films, and the director of GMK was kind of a one and done. So they went with the Mega Gears team, and I'm assuming that at one point they might have had the option of just making a sequel to Mega Gears, and maybe it was after some discussions they're like, well, we don't want to do a sequel. Like, let's kind of like restart it, you know, in a better way. And they clearly kind of do that with Against Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're on all of the differences, the similarities, the background, I will go into some information on Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. And this film is a 2002 Japanese kaiju film directed by Masaki Tezuka, written by Wataru Momura, and produced by Shogo Tamiyama. Produced and distributed by Toho, it is the 27th film in the Godzilla franchise and the fourth film in the franchise's Millennium period. It is also the 26th film produced by Toho. The film features the fictional giant monster character Godzilla, along with an updated version of the mecha character Mechagodzilla, who is referred to in the film as Kiryu, or Kiyu in the Japanese subtitled versions. The film stars Yumiko Shaku, Shin Temuka, Takasugi, Yusuke Tomoe, Kumi Mizuno, and Akira Nakao, with Tsutomu Kitagawa as Godzilla and Hirofumi Ishigaki as Kiyu or Kiryu. And like the previous films in the franchise's Millennium era, Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla is a reboot that ignores the events of every installment in the Godzilla film series aside from the original 1954 Godzilla.
One thing I do like about the sort of renewed timeline we'd get here is that there was sort of an effort to try and create something of a sort of third canon with a little bit more of a lineage than just continuing off of the original Godzilla movie. In the opening prologue of the movie, they show footage of and references to the original Mothra, and as well as War of the Gargantuas. And there's even a subtitle near the beginning of the movie where they talk about, I think it's the AMF, the Anti-Megalosaurus Force, and it says that it was established in 1966, which is a reference to when War of the Gargantuas took place. And they're using the maser tanks in this movie that were first introduced in War of the Gargantuas. So there was a cool little effort there to kind of give the film a sort of lineage or backstory, or to give a kind of third continuity to pair alongside the Showa era and the Heisei era that wasn't just doing another one-off sequel to the original. So I did appreciate that. That was kind of fun, and they do a little bit more of that in the next movie as well. So, but we'll get to that. But I enjoyed that aspect of the reboot that they were doing here.
Yeah, there's a lot here to enjoy. I don't want to go too far into it, but I liked that, they brought in the scientists and they showed them that they have Godzilla's bones, and they're like, "Oh, what do you want to do with that?" And they're, we're gonna make a defense weapon, and it turns out to be Mechagodzilla from the old bones. And there's just, I don't want to go too far into scenes and whatnot, but just when, like, the old bones of Godzilla, and then you got the new Godzilla, and when he roars and it just like chills him to his core, and he Mechagodzilla or Kyu turns bad and whatnot. But like I said, I don't want to go too far into it, but there's a lot to like about this film.
Yeah, it's a cool concept. The idea of Mechagodzilla being built over the original Godzilla's bones, like that's a very kind of cyberpunky sort of sci-fi horror type of concept, like the sort of like abomination, kind of concept. Like, oh, you're gonna take the bones of the corpse and build a cybernetic robot around it, like. It's like that meme. It's like, "Hello there, horrors beyond my imagining," or something, like that. It's like it, it's like, gosh, it's like it's crazy, but it's like also like kind of cool, kind of sci-fi, kind of cyberpunkish. Like it's a neat iteration of doing a Mecha Godzilla that isn't just pure robot, pure mecha.
Yeah, for sure. And let's keep going with this. I'll drop a trailer, get a plot synopsis in here of the film, and then you and I can get into the fun stuff, some numbers, some fun facts, and some more of what we liked on this film, Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla.
Sounds good.
Godzilla だ。超攻撃型メカゴジラ桐生。エネルギーの供給状況。
桐生が反応しません。自衛隊の発電だけじゃ賄えない。
なんとかしろ。遠隔操作システムが破壊されたものと。暴走を止める手立てはないのか。
行くよ、桐生。
砕け散るまで戦え。ゴジラ対メカゴジラ。
In 1999, 45 years after the original Godzilla's attack, Maser Cannon technician Lieutenant Akane Yashiro is unable to kill a new member of Godzilla's species during her first fight with it, leading to her commanding officer and some of her fellow soldiers being killed by the monster. As a result, Akane is demoted while scientists, including single father Tokumitsu Yahara, are gathered to build a biomechanical robot from the original Godzilla's skeleton. In time, the cyborg Godzilla named Kiryu is finished and inducted into the JSDF along with its human pilots, the Kiryu Squadron, with Akane as the primary pilot. However, memories of Akane's actions during the original fight still linger as one of her squadron mates, Second Lieutenant Susumu Hayama, holds her responsible for the death of his brother. 4 years later, Kiryu is unveiled in a global presentation where its remote systems, use of command aircraft, and absolute zero cannon are shown. Simultaneously, Godzilla returns and Kiryu is launched into battle. In the midst of this, however, Godzilla's roar causes Kiryu to experience memories of the original Godzilla's death and destroy the city while Godzilla retreats. The horrified Kiryu Squadron is powerless to stop the rampaging cyborg until it runs out of energy and is brought back to the headquarters for repairs. Meanwhile, Akane deals with Hayama's attempts to make her leave and Tokumitsu's attempts to get to know her despite her desiring solitude. Though she begins to develop a bond with Tokumitsu's young daughter Sarah. As Godzilla mounts another attack, the repaired Kiryu is deployed and confronts Godzilla once more. Kiryu gains the upper hand, but as it prepares the absolute zero cannon, Godzilla fires its atomic breath, knocking the cyborg away and diverting the blast. With Kiryu disabled and the remote piloting system taken offline, Akane orders Hayama to land his command craft so that she can use Kiryu's internal backup cockpit. Before she leaves, Hayama wishes her luck, forgiving her. Piloting Kiryu directly, Akane closes in on Godzilla, hoping to use the Absolute Zero cannon at point-blank range. The two monsters collide, and Akane uses Kiryu's thrusters to propel them out to sea before firing. In the aftermath, a wounded Godzilla retreats once more while Kiryu is heavily damaged. With the Kiryu squadron successful in repelling Godzilla, Kiryu is taken back to base for repairs. In a post-credits scene, Akane agrees to have dinner with the Yaharas and salutes Kiryu.
All right, Chris, how about I get into some numbers for you right away? Besides going into our character, score, quote, and scene, I think numbers are my favorite just because I like to hear the budget and Godzilla's screen time and whatnot.
Let's do it.
This film was budgeted at roughly $8.5 million and earned $2.2 million in its opening weekend. It grossed approximately $16 million in Japan, making it the second biggest of the Millennium Godzilla films at the box office. It sold approximately 1,700,000 tickets. And then this is a fun one I found. The U.S. Fathom Events screening of the film on November 3rd, 2022 grossed $335,000, placing it fifth among films that Thursday.
I was at that screening. I went to
That's
those.
one reason I
Yeah.
thought you would like that.
Yeah, that was very fun. Yes, I was working at a theater at the time. I was a manager at a theater at the time. Our theater was not, or no, I think our theater was doing the screening, but I hated our screens and our quality of presentation so much that after my shift, I left and I like raced to the next nearest theater that was showing it just so I could see it in a nice theater because I did not want to go to the theater that I worked at.
Well, the Fathom Events, that's I believe they sometimes show that in IMAX. I think when I seen the next film, it was in an IMAX screen, but I could be wrong. But I know I've seen it at an IMAX technically an IMAX theater.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't get to do Tokyo SOS in theaters. I don't know what that I just couldn't swing that one, but I did see this one. It was very cool.
I wish I would have been able to see both.
Yeah, that would have been nice. That would have been very nice. I'm gonna miss Godzilla 2000 as well, unfortunately.
Well, the only reason I was okay with that is that it was the Japanese
Yeah,
edition.
and I mean, gosh, not to harp on it, but that's a big disparity. If it was OG US Godzilla 2000, I would have found a way. I would have found a way to get that nostalgia back.
Oh yeah, I'd have been buying some tickets. Like I'd have told my lady, "Bring your ass, we're going." I'd have drug her along. All right. This film is rated a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb, a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't too bad. 90% again of Google users like this film, so thank you, Google users.
Yep, they know what's up.
Godzilla is on screen. It's a little bit short in this one, but it's a shorter film, so he's on screen for 11 minutes and 48 seconds, or 13% of the film, with his first appearance being just after 2 minutes into the film.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And it's a really good. While we're on it, it's a really good reveal. Megaguirus was Tezuka's first feature film directorial debut, and we kind of were harsh and calling the sort of filmmaking a little amateurish for that movie, and with this one, just with one movie, there's just a lot more skill and craft and thought going into the shots. When Godzilla is revealed in the opening scene of the movie, it's in rain, it's very atmospheric, and he's doing this sort of a Hitchcock effect thing, which is a thing that Alfred Hitchcock popularized, was when the camera angle shows the audience something that the character in the shot is not seeing. So it's famous for like when something's walking up behind someone else, the audience sees it, but the character doesn't know it's behind them. And so when the newscaster's reading his forecast in the rain there, and you see Godzilla rising up out of the water, like that's a classic sort of Hitchcock technique. and it's great because the dialogue is like really funnily like appropriate. He's saying like it's huge and getting bigger by the minute. He's referring to the hurricane or the typhoon or whatever, but like Godzilla is behind him raising up out of the ocean, getting bigger by the moment as he's saying that. Like a lot of good, a lot of really interesting directorial flares that Tezuka's clearly coming into his own with this movie, which is nice.
Yeah, we get some more of that little cheesy dialogue, like we continue to talk about from episode to episode.
Yeah.
One thing I will say that I really like about this film, and I've always been super high on, is the special effects.
Yeah, definitely. They're really, it is a really solid level, especially, it's always sort of grading on a curve because Japanese films, we talked about it. They have a fraction of the money and a fraction of the time that American blockbusters have. And now this is a film that's, you know, over 20 years old. And so plenty of films that are big budget Hollywood movies that are 20 years old haven't aged terribly well. But this is like, watching the Blu-ray recently, like it does hold up quite well for a movie that's 20 years old, from Japan with an $8 million budget, to be this big blockbuster. It's got good miniatures work. The CGI, it's not, amazingly perfectly photoreal, but the CGI holds up well. Like it's all pretty convincing and pretty spectacular.
Yeah, from rewatching it recently, the lasers, the missiles, all the explosions, like you said, the miniatures. I'm always a big miniature guy, so it's it's one of the ones that I look to when I think special effects and how good they are and whatnot. This is one of the films I look to, and like I can't talk highly enough about the special effects in this film. And I didn't realize it until my last rewatch, and I really started paying attention because I was like, all right, doing this podcast, I got to pay attention to things that I wouldn't normally, the explosions, the special effects. I try to pay more attention to the dialogue and whatnot. So I was really high on the special effects and whatnot for this film.
Yeah. There's like a cleanness to it, like they've kind of found their own. I love the way Godzilla's breath is in this movie. It's a little bit, in terms of the style of it, it's a little bit of the same kind of effect of 2000 and Megaguirus, only it's a blue version, and it just feels kind of thick and powerful. It doesn't feel kind of, GMK had a strong blast, but it was kind of misty. It kind of felt thin, and this one feels like it's like a beefy, punchier kind of atomic breath, and I really like that.
Yeah, this one's atomic breath. It kind of took us back home to the Heisei where it's that bright blue, but it's
Yeah,
back to it thick.
yeah,
It's almost like it's full power
yeah.
atomic breath.
Definitely.
Well, since I only got a couple fun facts for you here. I'll spitball those at you, and then I'll have you give me. Let me try this for the
We'll
77th
have
time.
we'll have me give you give mine, listening to you.
Talk about this and his. After fun facts, I'll have you start on our favorite characters.
Okay, we can do that. And I've got a fun fact in the pocket. If you don't mention it among yours, I've got one. I'll one or two maybe I'll drop.
All right, good. I love it. I love it. All right. Takahiro Murata, known for his roles in the Godzilla series, such as Kenji Ando in Godzilla vs. Mothra and Yuji Shinoda in Godzilla 2000, makes a cameo in this film as the convenience store clerk picking up cans in Tadayama, who witnesses several of the maser cannons drive past his shop.
Yep, that was always a fun camera. I remember as a kid being like, "Is that guy? Is that him? Is that him?" It's interesting to see like the lead of a movie show up in like a little bit role in another movie.
Yeah, when I first seen him, I'd probably on a rewatch when I was a little older, seeing it a third or fourth time, whatever. I was like, God, I hope he's from Godzilla 2000. I hope he's in more of the film. And then I was just a little disappointed because that was it. You get a 10-second little cameo and he's gone.
Yeah, and the actress who was the lead in Megaguirus, she has a cameo as a nurse helping a child near the end of the film. that Godzilla turns
Okay,
to.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, Godzilla turns to Roaster, and then Kiryu, Mechagodzilla swoops in and hits Godzilla out of the way.
Yeah, that I mean, they're nice little callbacks since the continuity from film to film doesn't continue. So I mean, I guess that's the only way I'm okay with that. Otherwise, it would have, if continuity would have, these films would have continued. It would have been nice to have both of them back into this one.
Yeah, I remember online once people sort of talked about like, with the way that Americans can kind of dub and rejigger and re-edit these movies, it's kind of like they weren't saying that it should happen, but they kind of postulated a way that like it's a little surprising that like if it were a different day and age, you maybe would have seen an American company try to weave these movies into continuity with each other, or at least more of them than we got. They probably would have tried to make Megaguirus some kind of Godzilla 2000 sequel. They might have you tied this in with Godzilla 2000 or Megaguirus to kind. They might have done weird things like that to kind of create more continuity than there was with these movies. It would have been interesting to see, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, what can you do?
Yeah,
All we can do is
I'm
talk
okay
about
with.
some
Yeah,
go with.
exactly. I'm okay with staying faithful to how the films are. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, these are fine in my book. Maybe one day somebody will create a YouTube where they delete scenes and add scenes to here and this and this and make like a 6-hour Godzilla film. Some nerd down the road who has too much time on his hands.
Yeah, some weird hybrid cut of all the movies that mashes them all together.
I've seen crazier things done on YouTube, I guess. So,
Indeed.
all right, back to this. According to the book, Godzilla X Mechagodzilla 2003, Toho's special effects film series special edition, Anguirus was originally planned to appear in this film and battle Kiryu, but was scrapped, and Anguirus was also considered to appear as a carcass in the film's sequel, Godzilla Tokyo SOS, before being replaced by the carcass of Kamibus.
Definitely would have been cool to see Anguirus in this movie, and I would imagine he would have been serving the purpose of showing how awesome Mechagodzilla was before Mechagodzilla fought Godzilla. I'm sure that's what they would have done. And it would have been a
Once again.
nod. Yeah, and it would have been a nod to the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla where they used Anguirus to show off how cool and badass Mechagodzilla was. That would have been a fun reference, would have liked to see that. And also just more Anguirus is always a good thing, but, wasn't meant to be apparently.
Nope, I'll never argue with more Anguirus, but I mean, seeing him dead, I probably would have been a happy camper.
Yeah, I can do without, we'll get to Tokyo SOS and we can argue the merits of would that carcass cameo have been cooler as a more recognizable kaiju, or is it better as a more obscure kaiju? I don't know. We'll have a more in-depth discussion on that when we get to that movie.
All right, last one I got for you before I let you go on yours is Japanese baseball star Hideki Matsui has a cameo as himself in the film due to his nickname Godzilla.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, he's the he's seen he lands that home run, and then later on when the power goes out, he's swinging, practicing in his home.
Yeah. They're like, what is that? Come on, kids, we gotta go.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's like, even as a young American kid watching it, the fact that like he was there at that game and then there shown again, I was like, oh, I'm like, this guy must be somebody notable or noteworthy in Japan that they're like he's got this cameo in this movie. I'm like, I clearly just don't get it because I'm an American and I have no context, I was like, I don't think the director's just a massive baseball fan or something.
Right, and once you grew a little older, you're like, oh, that's who that was. Now it all makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it is on brand for the movie because they talk about when he takes his daughter, when they offer to bring his daughter to work, they're like, oh, it's just like the baseball stars that take their kids into the dugout, So it's like it's kind of it's all kind of on brand for the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a couple that I have here, one of them's a little fun, is that the director wanted to include a scene during, I guess, some of the training montages or time lapse footage or whatever, where the lead actress Yumiko Shaku, who plays Akane, in a swimsuit was swimming past the camera in a close up, and it was supposed to be this sort of like, because there's a lot of anime vibes in this movie, so he was trying to lean more into like the fan service type of stuff that anime does, and apparently to this day he regrets not including those scenes in the movie.
I did not see that one when I was looking at all the information on this film.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah, that's a fun piece from the IMDb trivia, but I also saw the interview where he talked about it with my own eyes, and the way that it's a subtitled interview, but the way he's like, I still wish that I would have filmed those scenes of her in the swimsuit. It's like, what a Japanese pervert, but like I kind of love him for it. It's so endearing, you know. He just wanted to give fans the swimsuit scene.
Oh yeah, and as American men, we're like, we welcome it.
Hey, a lady in a bikini, that's not the worst thing in the world in a movie. That's harmless fun, nothing wrong with that.
Yep, give the teenage boys something to look at for a couple seconds.
Exactly. So the whole Kiryu name or Kiyu name for it's spelled Kiryu, but the dubbers pronounce it Kiyu, and I would have preferred that they just called it Mechagodzilla the whole time. But apparently that means machine dragon or mechanized dragon. So it's like a word that's kind of a hybrid of a word or something of that. But that's why they call it that, to kind of give this Mechagodzilla its own identity.
I did not know that either, but I'm with you on preferring Mechagodzilla over Kiryu or Kiyu.
Yeah, and they clearly respond to that on the dub side of it in the next film, because I think in the next film, like in this film, I think they call it Mechagodzilla or Mecha G. You can count on one hand, and then I think in the next movie it's inverted. They only mention Kiryu 1, 2, 3 times, and every other time is Mecha G. So they kind of flip it back because I guess people weren't fans of it being called Kiryu. Uh, Another interesting one is a little bit of a throwback to the original movie. Is that in Dr. Yahara's first scene, he's shown he's showing a mechanical trilobite that he sort of recreated with DNA and skeleton and technology and whatnot, and that's a reference to the original Godzilla, where they find a trilobite in one of Godzilla's first footprints when they're examining it on Odo Island. So that's a nice little callback to the original.
I like that. I like that. I did again. You're 3 for 3 on things that I didn't think about or did not know. So again, I always love Chris bringing in things I don't know. Even when he goes on rants, I'll take them. Talk away, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the most interesting ones I got. We talked in depth already about how it's the parallels to Mega Gears and things like that. So we're good there.
Absolutely. We can go into. Do you want to give me your favorite character for the film?
Yeah, I'll go. It's an easy pick for me. I like Akane. She's the female pilot, the lead of the movie. These kind of characters can sometimes be poorly executed in movies like this, especially if it was like a modern Hollywood production. But she's handled really well. She's got an interesting backstory. She makes a mistake. She's got this tragic history. She's sort of doubting herself the whole movie. She sort of thinks her life doesn't have value and things like that. She's sort of got no friends, no family, none of that. But she's sort of committed to the mission and committed to being the soldier. A very anime style character. If anyone were a big fan of sort of mecha anime like Gundam or Evangelion, they will kind of recognize the trope of the kind of loner pilot with no humanity, just dedicated to doing the mission. Like that's a very anime thing. So I like seeing that done as well as it is in live action.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. She was also my favorite character in the film. I liked that she had the mistake and she kind of had to own up to it, and then she just had a couple superiors or like of her coworkers, comrades, whatever you want to call them, who were just complete dicks. They took every shot they could at her. They pretty much were just bullying her, picking on her.
Yeah.
And like you said, she was having trouble with it, but she never gave up. She eventually got to where she wanted to be in the scene where, they're still being dicks to her. And the guy tosses the hat to her, like pretty much, like welcome to the team type thing. Like she finally gets through and people are like, "Hey, man, just quit picking on her now. Leave her alone. Like she's on the team. Like we need to support her." And eventually, in the end, she comes through for everyone.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to point out is that another sort of like it does the same thing as Mega Gears, but better is that they have the fellow pilot who was it his brother that was killed in the prologue or someone related? It was his brother, I think, that was killed in the prologue by her, mistake. And so he's got a grudge against her. Like he blames her for his death. And so he's kind of carrying a grudge. And Mega Gears didn't really explore anything like that. So it's like he's a total jerk, he's a total dick, but it sort of comes from a place where it's like, yeah, his brother died, and the closest person he has to blame would be her, even if it wasn't really her fault. Like the other pilots say, like, hey, Godzilla's the enemy here, not her. Like get your priorities straight.
Yeah, she was a very easy character to like, and I mean, it's not like this film was deep with characters that you could pick, but a lot of the times it's in these films, it's almost hard to go with one of the main characters
And I think
because there's usually, go ahead.
no, I think this one actually does it kind of a little bit better than a lot of them, to be honest. Because like even later on, she saves. I think it was his name was Hayama, I believe, and like she saves him, and he's kind of still jaded about it, like oh, you think I owe you my life now and all this whatnot. And the professor was like an interesting kind of character. Like he's a single dad, so he's not just like some weird perv, but at the same time he's kind of like hitting on a girl who's like way younger than him. But you can see that he's sort of that like desperate middle-aged guy where he's like, look, I'm a single dad, and like my kid probably needs a mom and I need a wife, and like it's kind of like it's a little bit fun and quirky. He's not like terribly like creepy or pervy or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a he's like, oh, my big mouth again.
Yeah, he's aware of how bad he is at re-entering the dating world. Okay, so the final note on Akane before we move on is that apparently at one point in the production of the film, at one stage, she was going to actually die in the final attack against Godzilla. Like it was going to be that she blew up trying to kill Godzilla in the final sort of explosion there. And it's like they clearly saw, like I don't think they ever filmed it that way. They clearly like knew that like that would be a pretty dark and depressing ending for a movie like this to kill the hero right at the end. And it would have been like a really kind of depressing ending for her character because like she spends half the movie saying like my life doesn't matter, no one's gonna miss me. And I guess it was gonna be this like poignant thing where she dies and then she has all of these people missing her and respecting her for her sacrifice. But I think it it would have been bold, but I'm kind of glad they didn't go that route, I think.
Yeah, and there's that one scene of her where she's like, "Oh, Mechagodzilla can be piloted manually or controlled manually," and everybody's like, "No, no, no, don't go, that's suicide, that's not, that's not." Or they're saying that his heat ray, it's a stream of pure radiation.
Yeah,
and
exactly. And the sacrificial hero role is fitting for the Godzilla franchise. It's not done a lot, but it goes back to the original movie. So I'm sure they could have done it in a way that would have really worked, but this doesn't feel like that kind of movie that should have that kind of ending to me. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I agree keeping her alive, at least for this film, letting her live out her days was the right choice in this film. But she does have a great character arc in this film.
Agreed.
I will go ahead, since we have the same favorite character, I'll go ahead and give you my favorite score of the film, which I thought we might have the same one of that as well, unless you got a surprise up your sleeve for me. And mine was the main title for Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla, which was this.
I liked that one. That was probably my favorite. Between Megaguirus and GMK, and then this film, Megaguirus, I clearly wasn't the biggest fan of the soundtrack. GMK, I absolutely thought it was phenomenal. And then back to this film, I wasn't the biggest fan again of this soundtrack, and I didn't find myself kind of like my normal Godzilla, kind of like jamming along to it while I was listening to it throughout the workday. But the main title in this film always stood out to me, so that's the one I chose as my favorite for this film.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the specific track I was going to name was Godzilla Lands, which is, again, it's essentially, when you get the main Godzilla theme of these films, you find it in a lot of other tracks. It's the Godzilla theme for this movie, a sort of beefed up, kind of more powerful version of the Godzilla theme that was initially introduced in Megaguirus. And that one, I don't know if they just had like a wider orchestra, or like more instruments, or a larger orchestra, or if there's something with the instrumentation of the way it's done. Like, clearly the rhythm of it is the same, but it just seems like bigger and more grand in this one. So I'm a big fan of it in this one. And I originally wasn't a huge fan of the sort of Mecha Godzilla theme, this sort of I don't want to say whimsical, but this sort of military sort of got this kind of military superiority kind of uh upbeat kind of military tune to Mechagodzilla. It's a big contrast from the kind of theme that Mechagodzilla has in the 1993 movie, where it's just this like very powerful drums heavy theme. This one's a bit more of like this heroic kind of theme for Mechagodzilla, but as time has gone by, that da 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 da, like I kind it's really grown on me. And with Mechagodzilla having a female pilot in this movie, there's kind of, it's not overt, but it kind of gives Mechagodzilla a bit more of a feminine quality, and like that kind of musical spectrum kind of works for that a little bit more. And so I kind of dig it. The military and Mechagodzilla themes throughout this, that sort of upbeat, more bright kind of musical spectrum, it's grown on me over the years.
Yeah, and when I originally watched these, I didn't really pay attention to the Godzilla soundtracks back when I was younger. I knew the Godzilla March and a lot of the old Showa era music and Heisei, but I never really paid attention to the Millennium music until more recently, probably a couple years ago, when I started really wanting to get a podcast going, and I just procrastinated and procrastinated. But I started listening to podcasts on my phone and soundtracks from films and whatnot. So that's probably when I started paying attention to the Millennium series soundtracks.
Nice. Yeah, they're a little under celebrated, because they don't have quite as much nostalgia. Their tracks haven't been reused and revisited quite as many times. But while the GMK score, I think, is excellent, kind of start to finish, Against Mechagodzilla isn't that sort of start to finish excellent, but it's got a few that are quite good. And I think we'll see a nice evolution of things into the next movie.
Yeah, it's hit or miss. And once we get to Tokyo SOS, I haven't listened to it in a while. I'll have to listen to it again, but from memory, I think it's a little more hit than miss.
Agreed.
What did you have a favorite quote or line of dialogue from this film?
Yeah, it's a heavy one, but it's one that I like. And you know, I think sometimes when these movies, they're generally made for all audiences, and somewhat younger skewing audiences, and they're pretty lighthearted films. They never get too dark and dismal and heavy for the kind of audience that they're made for. But I did like the line when Sarah is talking to Akane, and Akane starts to say, like, no one would miss me, or I should never have been born, or something to that effect. And Sarah, she comes back, she says, life is a precious thing, every life is worth something, every one. And it's like, that's that's a nice message to have in a movie. It's a little sappy, it's a little, chintzy, cheesy, heavy-handed, whatever, but it's a nice thing to have in a movie like this, and these movies don't get a lot of opportunities to deliver kind of heavier lines of dialogue like that, or something that's a little bit more uplifting like that. So I always, as a kid, that conversation always kind of like really kind of hit. They're talking about life and death, and life being meaningless and things like that. And like when you're kind of a kid, going through some stuff, like stuff like that, like it's nice to have those scenes in these movies sometimes.
And it's crazy that you chose that one because mine kind of goes right off yours a little later in the film. It's Akane and Sarah again, and Akane says, "Thank you," and Sarah says, "For what?" And then my favorite quote was Akane saying, "You gave me strength. So did the others. No life is worthless. I believe you now."
Yeah, yeah, I think that's from the post credit scene when they're talking, right? I believe.
I believe
And
so, yes.
yeah, and they're nice lines. It's cheesy, it's whatever, but there's a place for that stuff, and I like it.
Shows that Chris and I got a little soft spot in us for
E-
being, we're grown men, but we could still handle this.
exactly, shows that we were going through adolescence when we saw this movie.
Yeah, we didn't understand. Now we do.
Exactly.
Oh, going on from quote, I will give you my favorite scene in the film, and which I guess it's kind of cheating. I chose the final fight scene between Godzilla and Kiryu or Mechagodzilla, and I guess if I had to get specific, this is one of those fights where it's not a beam battle. Godzilla and them, they get in there, they're punching, he's throwing his tail. He's using his atomic breath or heat ray, but they're punching each other. They're like I said, they're hitting each other with tails. Mechagodzilla is launching missiles, and I like those fights that they get in there, and it's like a all out brawl. We got some rock'em sock'em robots just going at each other, and then I did like a little quick uh if I can do like a little honorable mention, is Godzilla walking away when he breaks out of the ice at the very end with the big scar and like wound on his chest, and Mechagodzilla rises or Kiryu rises out of the sea and is just completely damaged to hell. But other than that, the final fight scene when they're just all up in each other's faces, giving each other everything they got was my favorite scene.
Yeah, that's an excellent choice. I'll heap some praises on that before I throw out my favorite scene, because one thing I do love about the way that Mr. Tezuka likes to direct his kaiju films is that he always goes for a big, like, drawn out, really kind of soaking in the moment final one-on-one battle between the creatures. Say what you want about Megaguirus, but like it's got this really extended, entertaining final battle with Godzilla and Megaguirus, and this movie's the same thing. And one thing I love a lot about it is that it's kind of got these, like you said, it's not just a beam battle. It's a bit of a physical melee, but it has these sort of stages to it where Mechagodzilla comes in and does this sort of like shoulder bash on Godzilla and sends him flying. And over the course of the battle, you'll see, there's a scene where Mechagodzilla, I think, blocks one of Godzilla's blasts with one of its gauntlets, and so like one of the gauntlets gets blown off, and then Godzilla systematically like breaks the cannons, the shoulder cannons that Mechagodzilla has. Then Mechagodzilla shoots off the back part of the cannon. It's sort of, you see the sort of armor being stripped away and used up over the course of it before it just gets down to just Mechagodzilla and Godzilla, and you see how much more agile it is once the heavier pieces of armor like the gauntlets and the jetpack and shoulder cannons have been stripped away. And so then it just starts really kind of dropping the combos on Godzilla, and it's just an interesting and cool dynamic that they keep the battle in compelling stages, and then Mechagodzilla gets damaged and Akane has to go in and pilot it manually, and it's like a physical strain because she's no longer piloting it remotely. It is an awesome sequence. I didn't pick it as my favorite. I picked the one that I picked as my favorite is actually when Mechagodzilla loses control in the middle of the film and goes on a rampage, because it's such a great kind of oh crap moment. that they're totally in control, and they're laying everything into Godzilla, and Godzilla roars, and then this thing goes berserk. And again, very reminiscent of a certain sequence from an anime called Evangelion, and the idea of the sort of man-made, man-controlled creation going berserk, and going completely out of control, and being more more of a threat than the monster it was trying to defeat. It's sort of like this ultimate crisis moment, and it leads to these great shots of Mechagodzilla at sunset, sort of silhouetted against the sun and the sky. And so it's just a great moment. It's not like the most impressive, amazing display of the effects. That's definitely, I think, the final battle. But in terms of the scene and the moment, and the kind of like, oh crap, everything's just gone to hell overnight, or in a minute, kind of a moment. I like the Mechagodzilla losing control scene.
That was the scene that upon my rewatch made me really appreciate the special effects with the explosions and whatnot. So I can appreciate that scene as well.
Yeah, it's an excellent sequence. You get the great money shot of Mechagodzilla extending out its arms and firing all of the weapons off at the same time. That's the kind of stuff that you go to these movies for.
I think the part of that scene that I appreciate is when Mechagodzilla walks right through the building and leaves the building in almost like a arch shaped.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the frame of the building is left, but there's a huge hole within it. Yeah, excellent shot, excellent scene.
Absolutely. Those are definitely two great scenes of the film. That's probably 50% of the movie right there. That
I
that
was right about to say that we just claimed half the movie as our favorite scene.
that's fine.
But
It all works the
when you
same.
got an 88-minute movie, 88 minutes with the credits, that it's good to have such a huge portion of the movie represented by some great kaiju action scenes.
Yeah, easily half the film is, like you said, Godzilla and Mechagodzilla, and it's intercut with the humans and stuff like that, but it does enough to keep it interesting and keep it flowing at a good pace.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
What did you think of the updated Kiyu or Mechagodzilla design in this one?
Oh, I think it's badass. It's tough to pick a favorite Mechagodzilla design. I feel like anytime I watch a Mechagodzilla movie, I'm like, damn, this might be my favorite Mechagodzilla design. But it's an excellent one. It's got this very industrial new millennium kind of mecha look to it, where you see the armor plating, and then you see the sort of wires in between the armor plating, and every time it takes a step, you kind of hear the hydraulics going. Like they kind of go out of their way to try and sell the mechanical nature of it in a lot of way. And the armor, it's beefy. It's maybe a little thick, a little bit built up, but it sheds the sort of gauntlets and the shoulder cannons and the jetpack over the course of the final battle to get to a more classic Mechagodzilla look.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you said, especially I love and 100% agree with you on the look of the wires and the hydraulics underneath. And I would have loved to see the concept art, like, of this Kiryu or Mechagodzilla, of how this became to be the design they chose. I love that they gave him the longer tail. He's got the big feet with like the big toenails and stuff. I like certain designs that go big, and this is almost an exact, since they used the old bones of Godzilla, it had to be like Godzilla. And he's got the big toenails, the big feet, he's got the long tail. And I like this Mechagodzilla's spines a lot as well in the design.
Yeah, sort of has that kind of angular plating. Like it is really cool. And just the concept of it being built atop the original Godzilla bones, and it's this like DNA computer, like that stuff is just like really neat. And it's sort of like got this like ghost in the shell vibe kind of a thing. Like Godzilla died, but he's sort of weirdly artificially living in this sort of metal body. It's just a really unique concept, and the design is just really cool. Very sort of industrial, very sort of like modern mecha. It's just very cool.
Yeah, it's very man-made,
Yeah,
being that you can see like the hoses and whatnot.
Yeah, less stylized and more functional.
Well, Godzilla, on the other hand, I like this design. I liked that they went back to the enormous spines on his back, the blue heat ray. I still like the head and face. The head looks almost a little slimmer to me. I still like that they went with like the sharp teeth, the sharp toenails, again, the sharp spines. I like that his eyes are they're more pronounced. Like they're almost more, they focus on them more in this film as well.
Yeah, a bit
But
more emotive. Yeah.
yeah, all in all, I like this Godzilla design. Coming off of 2000 Megaguirus, I did like the purple tint to the spines, but then going back to GMK and now back with another different design in the Millennium era. I've liked all of them, and I continue to like this one as well.
Yeah, they don't miss, and this one's fun because it does feel like a bit of an alt version of the 2000 and Megaguirus design. That sort of green skin with the purple spines. These spines aren't quite as big as those, and this is more of a charcoal, like black and blue. The blue energy, but it's like a black and white kind of a design palette to the look that's not so much green and purple. And they go back to the blue energy blast, the classic blue blast and energy. I think it's a fun way of kind of keeping that Millennium sort of back spines that look a little crystal like, while also getting it a little bit more vintage, like Godzilla's got a charcoal color and things like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if I like the big spines with the purple tint or the more like white silverish kind of like you said diamond crystal like look how they are in this film, and I think I'm leaning towards this film in Against Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, I might be. I might be. It's tough to say. You know, something really will always be special about that Godzilla 2000 design, but I kind of dig this one. Just as much. It's a cool. Slightly slimmer. The sort of snout has a little bit of a. It's kind of odd that in certain profile shots, it's almost got this like beak-like curve to it in a way sometimes with the way it's kind of shaped. It's not bad or distracting, but it's kind of like it's a little interesting in how the sort of snout is designed, but it's not any kind of deal breaker for me.
No, not at all. I mean the designs of Mechagodzilla and Godzilla in this film are awesome designs to me. I don't really have anything bad to say about them, so I won't say anything bad about them.
Agreed.
All right. Do we want to get into our ranking of the Millennium films of the four that we have so far?
Yeah, we can do that. I'll let you lead on this one.
All right, including or actually we have five, sorry, because we are including Godzilla 98 in this.
Yeah, for the purposes of that, yes, we'll include 98. Yep.
All right, so going from bottom to top, worst to best, Godzilla 98 is still in the 5 spot. Godzilla vs. Megaguirus in the 4 spot. I would have to go Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla in the 3 spot, GMK in the 2 spot, and Godzilla 2000 still in the 1 spot for me.
Uh, yeah, that actually. Yeah, I think I mirror that exactly. Definitely 98 at the bottom, and then Mega Gear's just above it. It's kind of a it's kind of a conversation of whether you're going to put GMK or Against Mechagodzilla in the number 2 spot at this point. But I think overall I lean towards GMK over Against Mechagodzilla, but we might be in for a conversation when Tokyo SOS comes in, and yeah, I've got to put parentheses US version of Godzilla 2000 at my number 1 spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems like I said, like with this Millennium era, it seems like me and you are at least until these last two films when we've talked that we're pretty much riding on the same boat here. But You've heard me say that I wasn't too fond of Final Wars, but it's grown on me, so we'll see once we get to there.
That's
And then,
yeah, that's similar. I've gone on all kinds of swings with Final Wars. I've done oh my gosh, I love it because I'm 12, and then I've done oh my god, that movie's trash, and then I've kind of done like, well, you know what, I kind of love it again. So we'll see how this most recent rewatch goes.
yeah, for sure. And then with Tokyo SOS, everyone who's been listening knows I love Mothra.
I've
So
always I've
we'll
always loved Tokyo SOS. So
yeah, we'll see where that lands in this too.
yep, indeed we will.
Well, I think we were with these 7 films, 8 including G98.
Yeah, it's is it 7 or 8? Hold on, yeah, 98, 9, or yeah, 98, 99, 2000, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, there's 7 films including G98.
Okay, 7 films. All right. So out of these 7 films, what did we say? We are keeping 4 and getting rid of 3.
Was that it? We weren't doing a top 5. We were just keeping 4. Okay.
Do you want
Okay.
would
Well,
you
hey,
rather
we can do however you want. I mean, a top 5, you're only getting rid of 2, so it's not as hard of a decision. If you go just to keep 4, it kind of, maybe we've got to make some harsher choices. So it's entirely up to you how you want to do it.
Well, if we go 4, I think this week we both know what's getting kicked off.
Yeah, pretty clearly. Yes.
So I think we're both saying that G98 out of
Yeah.
these 5, you got to go.
Yeah, I would bump G98. Sorry. I like you, but I don't love you that much.
All right, so with 2 to go, we got 2 to get rid of. So we'll see how that goes coming up in the next 2 episodes.
Indeed we will. Indeed we will.
All right, Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. This film was followed by a direct sequel, being Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which opened on December 14th of 2003, and we will take a look at that next week and get a deep dive into that film. So, Chris, you got anything more to say about Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla before we head out?
No, really good movie, really good sort of standard issue highlight Godzilla movie of the Millennium era. This is another good, these Millennium movies being not so old, but kind of vintage and classic, and being largely one-offs. A lot of them are really good, gateway drugs, really good sort of entry points into the franchise for anyone new who kind of wants to see a man in suit Godzilla movie, but maybe doesn't want to start with the very, very old man in suit Godzilla movies, and kind of doesn't want to worry about how much lore or how many films they have to watch. These Millennium movies are really good for that. That you can kind of just come in, pick one out, and mostly be good to go, and kind of get a sampling of what these films are all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was gonna say that anyone who wants like a quick Godzilla film but doesn't want to watch one of like the oldie films to be like introduced to, because all the Showa era films, most of them are 85, 88, 89, 91 minutes. They're pretty relatively quick films, but if you want something more modern that's a quick hour and 25, hour and 30 minutes, this is one of those films that you can just pop in and take an hour and a half and try to enjoy it and get a feel for Godzilla and see if you like it or not.
Yeah, I think at 88 minutes, I actually think that it is the shortest Godzilla movie since the 70s. I think you have to go back to the 70s to find one as short as this or shorter. So I think all of the Heiseis were about 100 minutes. Even the US shorter cut of Godzilla 2000 is like 90, 99 minutes. Megaguirus and GMK are both about 100 minutes. This one being 88 is definitely the shortest one in decades at this point.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy to think about. I've honestly never thought about that until you brought it up. So there's another, I guess we can call that another little fun fact for you.
Exactly.
But that is all I have on Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. So, Chris, once again, man, 27 in, and I appreciate you joining me so far for all 27.
Yep, we're in kind of the home stretch here. You know, we're coming up to the tail end of the Millennium era, and then it's just going to be all pure modern stuff after this.
Absolutely, and I'm ready to finish this off and to get to the MonsterVerse and Shin Godzilla and anything else that Hollywood or Toho has to bring us after that.
Yep, nothing makes me feel older than the Millennium movies no longer being the new Godzilla movies.
Yeah, they came out in our childhood, and now kids are getting to enjoy the MonsterVerse while we're fanboying over it at 30 years old.
Yeah, we're over here like GMK was a real Godzilla movie. None of this modern stuff.
Yeah, we bring back the men in suits. Come on.
Yeah. Oh geez. Oh geez.
But again, thank you for joining me. Godzilla Tokyo SOS is next week. So thanks to anyone out there who's listening. Chris, again, thanks for joining me, and until next time.